My uncle Gary retired at 63, worked 35 years as a plant supervisor, saved reasonably well, had about $340,000 in his 401k. The week he retired, he walked into a dealership and bought a brand new $68,000 pickup truck. Fully loaded, leather seats, the towing package, all of it. 3 years later, I asked him what he wished he'd done differently in retirement. He didn't even hesitate. "That truck," he said. My name is Joe, and I spend a lot of time talking to people who are on the other side of retirement, not planning for it, but living it. And the same 5 regrets come up over and over again. Not the big existential stuff. Specific purchases, specific financial decisions made in the first few years of retirement that quietly destroyed their sense of security for the next 20. Here's the thing nobody tells you about retirement spending. When you're working, bad financial decisions have a recovery mechanism. You get another paycheck, you have time. But the day you retire, that mechanism turns off. Every dollar you spend is a dollar that can never compound again. It doesn't just cost you the sticker price, it costs you what that money would have been worth in 15 years. So let's go through the 5 purchases retirees regret most, and more importantly, why. Because the psychology is what prevents you from making the same mistake. Regret number 1, the dream vehicle. Back to Gary in that $68,000 truck. Here's the math he didn't run. He had $340,000 saved. At 4% withdrawal, that's $13,600 a year from investments. Add Social Security, and he had about $36,400 annually. Manageable, except $68,000 of that $340,000 just became a depreciating asset. His investable base dropped to $272,000. But that's not the real cost. $68,000 invested for 15 years at 7% would have been worth $187,000. He didn't spend $68,000, he spent $187,000. He just won't see it missing until he's 78 and his balance is running low. This shows up in boats, RVs, motorcycles, sports cars, all the toys people spent decades promising themselves. The retirees who don't regret these purchases are the ones who budgeted for them specifically, a separate pot they could afford to zero out. The ones who regret it bought first and did the math second, or never. Regret number 2, the house they couldn't afford to keep. Meet Linda, retired at 64 with $420,000 saved and a house worth $780,000 outside Boston. She stayed. Why wouldn't she? 28 years. Her kids grew up there. Here's what that house actually cost her. Property taxes, $9,200. Insurance, $3,400. Maintenance, planners use 1 to 2% of home value annually. That's up to $15,600 a year. Before Linda bought a single grocery item, her house was consuming $28,000 per year. Her Social Security was $22,000. Within 4 years, she was withdrawing 7 to 8% annually instead of 4%. Her $420,000 was going to last 11 years, not 25. She was 68 before she admitted she needed to sell. The regret isn't owning the house, it's staying in a house that became a financial anchor without running the actual numbers. Emotional attachment is real, but it has to sit next to a spreadsheet. Most people skip the spreadsheet. Regret number 3, first-year celebration spending. The first year of retirement has a name among financial planners, the honeymoon phase. You've spent 35 years in a routine. Now you're free, and the instinct is to spend. Bigger vacations, helping adult kids with down payments, paying off grandkids' car loans, redoing the kitchen. Every purchase feels earned, because it is earned. Here's the problem. Research shows retirees spend 20 to 40% more in their first 2 to 3 years than in subsequent years. That spending almost always comes directly from principal, the core portfolio they need for the next 2 decades. I know a retired couple, Frank and Diane. In their first 2 years, they spent $47,000 helping their daughter renovate, took 3 international trips totaling $31,000, and redid their backyard for $22,000, about $100,000 in 2 years of celebration spending all from savings. At 72, Diane told me the backyard looked beautiful, and she wished she had the money back. Not because it wasn't wonderful, because $100,000 invested would have been worth over $190,000 in 10 years. And at 72, that's healthcare money. That's flexibility money. That's the difference between options and desperation. Establish your annual budget before you spend anything big. Know your safe withdrawal rate. Know your fixed costs. Then decide what's left for celebration, not the other way around. Regret number 4, the vacation home. A modest lake house runs $400,000. Property taxes, insurance, HOA fees, and maintenance on a vacation property typically run 3 to 5% of value annually. That's $12,000 to $20,000 a year before you visit once. Most vacation homeowners use their second property about 28 days per year. You're paying $535 per night in carrying costs alone. Maybe you plan to rent it out. Most retirees managing their own rental are burned out within 3 years. It's a job. You just retired from working. The deeper problem is liquidity. Most people buy the vacation home with a large chunk of savings. That capital is now frozen in an illiquid asset. If markets drop, you can't rebalance. If you have a health emergency, you can't access it quickly. You've taken flexible, working money and locked it into something that costs money every month, whether you're there or not. The retirees who don't regret second homes had $2.5 million saved, and their fixed expenses were already covered. The vacation home was genuinely discretionary. For everyone else, it quietly erodes the retirement they spent decades building. Regret number 5, the investment they didn't understand. This one doesn't feel like a purchase at the time. It feels like a smart financial move. You retire, you have capital and time, and a sense you should be doing something sophisticated. And someone tells you about an opportunity, a private real estate syndication, a business a neighbor is starting, an annuity promising guaranteed income with upside, a private fund returning 12% a year. The pitch is always the same. You've earned access to what the wealthy do with their money. Retirees are the most targeted demographic for complex financial products in the country, not because they're naive, because they have the 3 things these products need: capital, time, and an emotional desire to feel like their money is working hard. I know a retired engineer named Robert. He put $180,000, nearly a third of his savings, into a private real estate fund at 67, promising 9% annual distributions. The fund was legitimate, but when commercial real estate hit headwinds, distributions were suspended and his capital was locked until 2029. He's 71. He can't access that $180,000. His entire retirement math changed. He didn't lose it to a scam. He lost his flexibility to a product he didn't fully understand, pitched by someone whose job was to close the deal, not protect his retirement. The rule is simple. If you can't explain exactly how it makes money, exactly when you can get your money back, and what happens if the assumptions are wrong, don't buy it. Here's what ties all 5 together. Each of these purchases felt like a reward: a truck earned after 35 years of commuting, a house by the water after decades of work, generosity to the people you love, a smart investment after a career of taking orders. None of them felt like a mistake in the moment. That's exactly what makes them dangerous. The retirees who avoid these regrets aren't less generous or less fun. They just run the numbers first. They understand that in retirement, every dollar has a second price, what it would have been worth if it stayed invested. Once you internalize that second price, you make completely different decisions. The truck isn't $68,000, it's $187,000 over 15 years. The vacation home isn't $400,000, it's the liquidity you no longer have when something goes wrong. The honeymoon spending isn't celebration, it's principal erosion in the most vulnerable phase of your financial life. My Uncle Gary still drives that truck, and he watches his account balance more nervously than he expected at 66. The truck is worth maybe $42,000 now. The gap between what he paid and what it's worth is gone. The gap between what it would have been and what it is, that's what he thinks about at 2 in the morning. Don't be Gary. Run the numbers first. Celebrate second. Hit subscribe if this helped you think differently about retirement spending. Drop a comment telling me which of these 5 surprised you most. I'll see you in the next video.